Well, again, folks, thanks for joining us at the start of all the meetings. The University of Utah is committed to acknowledging the space within, even though we're in a virtual space. Sondra, Dr. Stegenga, and I are physically residing in a place that's important to Indigenous peoples. And so we would like to start this meeting with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is their traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities.
And at the University of Arizona, which is where I reside, as well as two other PIs who are not able to make it tonight, we also want to respectfully acknowledge that the University of Arizona is land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the Ohlone and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. Thank you all for being here.
And then we thought that we would just start with some quick introductions of ourselves. So my name is Dr. Matt Jameson. I'm a professor and department chair in special education with, again, an emphasis on students with more complex support needs here at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, Utah. My sort of research focus, in addition to well, again, primarily focused around structures to support inclusive education for, again, students with significant or more complex support needs. Have done a lot of research on embedded instruction as an instructional strategy to provide highly systematic instruction in inclusive settings. Have also done a fair amount of work on collecting data on sort of outcomes for students with disabilities and impacts on their placement conditions, how often or how much they're included in gen ed contexts and settings. And again, really focus on increasingly looking at larger data sets and systems change movements to support the inclusion of students with significant disabilities. Dr. Stegenga, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. We're so glad you're here tonight. I'm Dr. Sandra Stegenga. As Dr. Jameson mentioned, I'm here at the University of Utah. I actually am part of the Early Intervention, Early Childhood Special Education program, but also teach classes within our Severe Disabilities program, and have a long history actually as a provider and administrator in educational systems. I actually was an occupational therapist before I ended up going into school administration and doing research. And so I'm very passionate about supporting students with extensive support needs. My research areas focus heavily on social emotional assessment and intervention and mental health, as well as interagency and interdisciplinary collaboration and implementation science and policy. In all of my common work that I've done, I kept finding that it comes back to so much of our systems change. If we really want to see real world change, we have to change those surrounding structures and our longtime policies that we've been involved with. So anyway, this grant is very exciting because those are huge focus areas of it, and look forward to talking with all of you tonight.
Thank you. And for the University of Arizona team, I am representing us here tonight. My name is Kirsten Lancey, and my career focus is systemic educational change so that students with complex support needs receive inclusive and equitable learning opportunities that support them in reaching their goals. My current research focuses on identifying inequities and segregated educational placements for students with disabilities and intersecting identities through the exploration of multi-level factors. I also want to introduce my two other colleagues who are PIs or principal investigators on this grant as well. First is Dr. Tasia Gonzalez. Her research addresses issues of equity and inclusion for emergent bilinguals with and without disabilities. And she's currently examining how Latino, Latina, Latinx, bilingual youth with and without learning disabilities use testimonios to rewrite their experiences with educational inequities. And then our other colleague is Dr. Ade Tefera, and her interdisciplinary scholarship examines how educational policies aimed at improving equity among students at the intersection of race, disability, and language are enacted and interrupted by students and families, educators, and leaders. So her work really explores how historical, sociocultural, and spatial contexts mediate how educators and leaders respond to and understand citations for racial disproportionality. All right. And before we move forward, I just want to say that feel free to throw any questions that you might have in the chat, and we'll address them as we go via the chat. But also at the end of the presentation, we will take chat questions as well as do any verbal questions you all might have as well. All right, Matt. I think you're on mute still.
Just like to again sort of give you an overview of sort of the University of Utah and maybe the Department of Special Education and College of Education and its positioning there. So our campus, we're a Research One, R1 institution. The University of Utah is the flagship institution for Utah. There are several other universities, Southern Utah, BYU, Utah State. So there are other educational collaborators and partners around the state in higher education. It's located in Salt Lake City, one of the sort of increasingly attractive metropolitan areas to live, it seems. Lots of outdoor recreation opportunities. Indeed, again, so historically, our campus has been, in many ways a commuter campus, but in the last decade has had a large shift with both an influx of international and out-of-state students. One of the most exciting sort of evolutions of this is a new development of very large and nice graduate school housing in a very desirable place close to campus. The campus, again, is located within an hour of 9 ski resorts and really other countless recreational opportunities, mountain biking, hiking, anything that you could name. Close to state and national parks, again, six national parks within a 4-hour drive of campus. Great transportation infrastructure for students, free bus and train passes. And then the Department of Special Education. Am I jumping ahead? I'm sorry. Was that more specific information, Kirsten, or would that fit in right here as well?
I don't know, Department of Education for what?
Oh, I was just going to talk about the department briefly.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, no, I was just going to say that we, one of the few departments I think in the country that has every specialization area in terms of complex support needs, mild, moderate disabilities, early childhood, deaf blindness, deaf, hard of hearing, visual impairment, and adaptive physical education. So lots of opportunities to collaborate from, really working from this lens of extensive support needs, systems change, inclusion, leadership and policy, but lots of opportunities to collaborate with a wide breadth and depth of expertise and knowledge in the department. So quick overview there of University of Utah.
Great, thank you. So the University of Arizona, we're a Hispanic serving institution, which means that 25% or greater of our undergraduate enrollment is Hispanic or Latino, Latinx, or Latina. We have a Disability Cultural Center, which is a space for students, faculty, and staff to explore and celebrate disability identity, culture, and community. And it's one of few in the nation, so it's exciting to have that on campus. We are also a research-intensive institution, or an R1, in addition to University of Utah. And we're also the flagship university, which means we're the first university in the state of Arizona. So Tucson, or Arizona, is home to, there's 22 federally recognized indigenous tribes in Arizona. There's also close proximity to metropolitan areas such as Phoenix, which I think last I checked was the 6th biggest city in the United States, although that could have changed. And then also just an hour away from Mexico. So there's a lot of different communities to be involved with and collaborate with around the Tucson area. Tucson is also one of the sunniest cities in the nation, whether that be positive or negative, but we are very warm and sunny most of the year, which is great for winter as well. So, all right. Matt, you touched on this a little bit, but showing all the different programs here.
I did jump ahead. I couldn't remember if there was a slide coming or not. So again, I told you already a little bit about this, that this doctoral program will be situated with one of the content areas that I told you before. Again, a focus on this one really on complex support needs, or at this point in time, dictated by our state licensure. Our program name is severe disabilities. We're working with the state both to change the licensure and our program name. Focus more on support needs. Our program, again, is a robust program. It offers master's programs. I told you again about all the different specializations, though I did forget one. I always struggle to remember all the specializations. We also run the board certified behavior analysis program, which is being renamed the ABA program, but it allows students to sit for their BCBA. So we have a number of faculty in ABA in the department as well. I think that one of the other sort of really unique aspects of our program is our adaptive physical education program runs a program we call UFIT, which is student volunteer driven. So we have 80 school-age students with disabilities come from the community up and use the university recreation facilities. Specifically, they rotate through 3 rotations: a swimming rotation, a dance rotation, and a games rotation every night. It's run again by 125 student volunteers every semester. Great program for community outreach. And engagement, and again, lots of opportunities for collaboration and working with families as well there. We also do offer an undergraduate program, again, in all of those. Well, I guess not all of our programs go down to the undergraduate level, but many of our teacher licensure programs are offered at the undergraduate level as well. We have 9 tenure track faculty, 6 career line faculty, very productive department. Again, this year, operating on about $2.5 million in grants. Last year, the faculty of 9 produced around 40 peer-reviewed journal articles. And again, every one of our faculty members is a PI on a professional development grant, and many of them on research grants as well. So really exciting time to be in the department. Very dynamic time at the University of Utah. We have a relatively new president and provost. Their drive is to make the University of Utah one of the top 10 public institutions in the country. Some of the ratings are already coming out. Wall Street Journal recently ranked the University of Utah as the #8 public institution in the country. So an enormous emphasis on supporting the development of research and grant submission. And as such, you all as doctoral candidates and then doctoral students are an enormous component of that process. And so we're really excited to be able to offer the opportunity for funded slots to be an environment, again, which I suggest is very dynamic and full of opportunity right now at the University of Utah.
Great, thank you. And then at the University of Arizona, so we have a department called the Disability and Psychoeducational Studies Department. And with the department, there are, I believe, 4 different units, and special education is one of those units within the department. That also includes other units such as ASL interpreting, as well as counseling, and I can't remember the fourth, but it's another unit related to counseling. And so the special education unit within our department, we have 5 tenure track faculty as well as many more career line faculty. And our unit offers doctoral program, master's level programs, and undergraduate level program. So the doctoral program is really interdisciplinary, and it's focused on critical perspectives. So it's not necessarily situated within one of the master's programs, such as applied behavioral analysis. However, for this grant, obviously, there's a focus on students with complex support needs and systems change, as well as being situated within the interdisciplinary and critical perspectives of the coursework that you would take within the program, and very much focused on also culturally sustaining practices. So the master's program, we have 5 different master's programs: applied behavioral analysis, deaf and hard of hearing, blind and visual impairment, mild and moderate disabilities, and severe and multiple disabilities. And then we have 1 undergraduate program, which is mild and moderate disabilities. And so these are all programs that you would have opportunities to teach classes within if you were coming as a PhD student, to co-teach master's level classes and do supervision, for example, within these programs as well. And so there's lots of opportunities, as Matt discussed, at the University of Utah, that also are here at the University of Arizona, where you would have sort of rich opportunities to collaborate also across different programmatic areas as well. Okay. So we are going to be preparing 8 students for leadership positions with expertise in effective practices associated with systemic educational change for equity and inclusion of diverse students with extensive support needs. And so that means that we have 4 students at the University of Utah, and we'll have 4 students at the University of Arizona on this SCIENCE-ESN funding. And we are aiming to increase the number of scholars from traditionally underrepresented groups. So that might mean multilingual and racially diverse scholars, scholars with disabilities, scholars with children. So we are definitely here to support those applicants as well. The program is really designed to support students to gain knowledge in 2 areas. The first being systemic educational change. And so within that is 5 different focus areas: equity and justice, inclusive education, leadership and policy, positive behavioral supports, and systems change and implementation science. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about how those are sort of integrated within the program, but just know that they are the topical areas of 5 different seminars that you would take as a doctoral student and with this funding source. You're also going to gain knowledge in faculty roles and responsibilities. So the focus here is really to support you to be transitioning into leadership positions or faculty positions at institutions of higher education. So that means understanding how to conduct rigorous and ethical research, how to have effective university teaching and field supervision of pre-service teachers in diverse schools, as well as providing meaningful service to the university, to the profession, and to the community. So if you receive funding under SCIENCE-ESN, in addition to learning those 2 core areas, you'll also be gaining experience and opportunities for collaboration. So the 5 faculty members who we already discussed, obviously will support you across institutions. So you'll be able to have the opportunity to really get advisement and support from 5 faculty members at 2 different institutions with 2 different, structures, which is really beneficial if you move forward into a faculty position. Also, you will have a cohort of 8 students on this grant at the 2 institutions. So you'll be with a cohort of a large cohort of students, which is really great for collaboration, with support, with your research, future endeavors, and things like that. We also have a distributed mentorship model, which means that you won't just receive mentorship from your advisor. you're also going to have support and mentorship from different people within the community and within the field to support you in different realms that you might need. So for example, you are going to have support from a national expert, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, and also potentially 1 or 2 additional mentors, either at the local or national level of your choosing. So those could be people who have similar identities as you, who are interested in similar areas as you, to really fulfill those mentorship roles that you need to ultimately move forward and be successful as a PhD student. And hopefully in the future as well, keeping those collaborations and mentorship opportunities. So as I mentioned, those 5 different areas of systems change are part of shared coursework. So there are 5 seminars and 1 foundational course, so 6 total, that you will take at the University of Arizona or the University of Utah, but with your cohort of 8 students. The grant also incorporates 2 internships, one being college teaching. So if you went to the University of Utah, that would be teaching an online course as well as an in-person course. And at the University of Arizona, it would be one or the other, or both if you have the opportunity and time in your schedule. And then also student supervision of pre-service teachers. So we talked about the different programs that each institution has. So that might be doing supervision of students in the severe and master's program, for example. And then we have 2 externships. So the first is an externship at a high needs school district. So we already have established collaborations with certain school districts in Tucson, as well as in Salt Lake. So at the University of Arizona, this would be Sunnyside Unified School District. And the University of Utah, this would either be Salt Lake School District, Murray School District, or San Juan School District. And this would be really an opportunity for you to work in collaboration with teachers or admin at the school or district or classroom level to implement evidence-based practices that are inclusive or systems change efforts within the school context. So it's very practical. And then finally, the second externship is at a national or state policy organization or education board. So this is really individualized, but we do have collaborations already set up with certain national and state entities that you would be able to take advantage of and do as part of your externship. So this would be, for example, working for the Cedar Center. It could be working for CEC, which is the Council for Exceptional Children. It could be doing an externship with HEXI, which is the Higher Education Consortium for Special Education. And then we also have state level externships. So in Utah, we have the Utah State Board of Education, as well as the Institute of Disability Research Policy and Practice. And then in Arizona, we have a collaboration with the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities. So I want to just briefly go over what the coursework as well as the experiences look like at both institutions, as well as how they sort of align. And so on the left side, you can see the area of study. So we have 4 different sort of topical areas. And then we distribute, okay, what classes are under the University of Utah under this topical area, which classes are under the University of Arizona in this topical area, and then which courses are shared. So what courses do you all 8 take together? And so the first area we have is core content knowledge. So this includes things such as learning how to write grants, learning how to teach a university course. And then we also have one shared course, which is that foundational course I mentioned. And this is through the University of Arizona, called Race, Culture, and Language in Special Education. The next topical area is learning about research and inquiry. So this is, for example, courses that teach you how to conduct qualitative and quantitative research. So that might include statistical, or not might, it definitely includes statistical analysis, single subject research, for example. And then also this includes conducting research with a faculty member before your dissertation, as well as eventually your dissertation, which I'll talk about in a minute. The third area of study is university teaching, and supervision. So as I mentioned, you're going to be teaching college courses with support from faculty members, and then supervising pre-service teachers out in the field, also with support from faculty members. And then finally, we have the fifth or fourth topical area, I guess not finally, which is the systemic education change seminars. So these are the 5 seminars, as I mentioned, that focus on equity and justice, inclusive, positive behavioral support, leadership and policy. And so these are offered either at the University of Arizona, which I think there's 3 total offered at the U of A, and then there's 2 offered at the University of Utah. So students, for example, for a course that's offered through the University of Arizona, those students would be on campus in person, and then the 4 students at the University of Utah would be remote, but simultaneously participating in that class through technology. And then also those 2 externship activities. So collaborating with a school district, as well as that externship with a policy or leadership entity. And then, of course, your dissertation. So this is the same at both institutions, where you would prepare your dissertation proposal, as well as conduct your dissertation and write your dissertation and defend your dissertation. So that leads me into the next section, which is just an overview of what your 4 years might look like. So in year 1, you will be taking coursework, and then you will take your qualifying examination. And this will be a presentation of scholarly writing. So it's not a exam as you would traditionally think about it, like sitting down and writing up a paper in front of people, or filling in bubbles, for example, but a presentation of your scholarly writing to your committee. And your committee would be faculty member at the University of Arizona, for example, and maybe also an external member from the University of Utah, and vice versa. And so at the University of Utah, this would be a chapter 1 of your dissertation, or a literature review. And at the University of Arizona, it would be a piece of work that you have written during that first year in the program. So likely a lit review as well, but it could be something else. In year 2, you would also take coursework. And then in year 3, you would finalize your coursework. So you would take both semesters. You would also, near the end of year 3, have a comprehensive exam, which is a portfolio review. So like the qualifying exam, it's not a traditional examination, but rather it is a compilation of different experiences that you've had and different products that you've developed, all related to being a faculty member at an institution of higher education. So these portfolio items, like I said, are experiences and products, and they could include things such as a publication, a grant that you wrote. It could be evidence of teaching a course, evidence of writing a grant or a research paper. It could also be some sort of university service or in-service, for example, among other things. And then you would have your dissertation proposal meeting. So at this time is when you would come to your committee and say, this is what I want to do for my dissertation. And your committee would give you feedback. And then you would either get to go ahead and move forward with conducting your dissertation, or you would do some revision and go back to the committee and then move forward eventually once you get that approval. And so at the end of year 3, once you get that approval to move forward with your dissertation research, you would likely do a IRB, which is where you apply to conduct research with human subjects. And then once you get that approved, you would collect data to do your dissertation. You would write up your dissertation. And then at the end of year 4, you would defend your dissertation. Okay. So funding, a quick overview of what SCIENCE-ESN funding will look like. So this is a funding opportunity that covers tuition and a living stipend for 4 years. So this living stipend includes $40,000 per year, plus a 2% increase per year for increases in cost of living. So it starts at $40,000 and then goes up 2% each year for the 4 years. It also, within this, includes travel to conferences, as well as supplies that you might need. So textbooks or computers, things like that. We also have additional individualized needs-based funding. And so we have allocated a lump sum of money that students under SCIENCE-ESN can apply to based on situational things that come up in their life. So for example, if they need to get health insurance, they could put a proposal in to us as the PIs and say, I need some additional funds for this reason, or I need support with childcare, or whatever it might be. So these are individual, which means they are not the same for all scholars, but scholars can apply to get these additional funds throughout the program. And this intent is really to support scholars to be successful and have the support that they need to be successful to complete the program in 4 years, which is why we really tried to do the stipend as high as possible and then have these additional funds as well.
And we had one new and exciting addition to this at the University of Utah, which is, I believe the University of Utah is going to be subsidizing graduate student insurance moving forward. So that would be built into
Oh, that's wonderful.
the support package at the University of Utah as well.
That's great. That is not the case for the University of Arizona, I don't believe.
Well, this is brand new, so there might be some qualifications I don't know about yet, but it's an exciting opportunity, I think.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Fingers crossed it's moves forward cleanly and smoothly for everyone. Okay. So there are obligations for you as a student if you receive SCIENCE-ESN funding. So first off, the funding begins in fall of 2024, which means this coming fall. You would have to be a full-time student, which means you would take at least 9 credits per semester. And it is an in-person commitment. So you would need to be located in Tucson or the surrounding areas, or Salt Lake or the surrounding areas. And that is because the vast majority of the classes are in person. And also these additional experiences at school districts and then, externships at state boards of ed, for example, are really local opportunities. And so it does require an in-person commitment. We do expect you to graduate in 4 years because that is the amount of funding that we have allocated for students. The funder, which is OSEP, or the Office of Special Education Programs, requires that this funding goes to either U.S. citizens or U.S. permanent residents. There are some exceptions, so if you have questions about that, I'll send out the slides after the presentation, and please, you can follow up with more details about this criteria with the link that I provided on the PowerPoint. And OSEP also requires a service obligation of scholars who receive funding. So that means that for every year of funding, you have to do 2 years of service in special education or a related field. And 51% of your time during those 8 years, ultimately, so 2 years for every 1 year of funding. So for those 8 years of service, it has to be related to special education or a related field, and 51% of your time needs to be related to your training that you received. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to work with students with disabilities 51% of your time. It's that 51% of your time needs to be related to what you learned and were taught within your doc program and within the SCIENCE-ESN funding. If you do not fulfill the service obligation, or if you choose not to, then it would require repayment back to OSEP. Please also know that once you graduate and you are starting to report your employment to OSEP through a portal that's called PDP, once you start that process and once you graduate, the institutions, so the University of Arizona and the University of Utah, are no longer involved with this process. This is between you as a scholar, as a graduate, and directly related and aligned with OSEP. Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
We had a question too in the chat, Kristen, which was whether folks could maintain their teaching position if they were enrolled in the program. I briefly answered in the chat that, again, we strongly encourage you to fully devote yourself to the doctoral program. I think it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to complete the program if you were employed during the day. A lot of the seminars offered, at least for the University of Utah, are offered during the daytime. Most of our stat sequences are daytime courses. So at a minimum, you need additional flexibility. But then on a bigger, just piece of that, I think my experience with doctoral candidates at the University of Utah are the ones that have gotten the most out of the program are ones who are around and take advantage of opportunities of running into faculty, and that leads to opportunities to collaborate and work on additional projects. And so I think that's why we have written in the support that we have. Again, certainly $40,000 is not a ton of money to live on for a year. That does come again with additional benefits, full tuition, et cetera. I really do think from the University of Utah perspective is that we certainly would prioritize people who were devoting themselves full-time to the program and had the capacity to do so. I didn't know if that was the case for U of A or not.
Yeah, it's the same because it's also, right, we have funding for 4 years, and you're right, it's very difficult for students to be able to finish within the 4-year time period when they're working even part-time. But it is an individual basis that can be determined between the student and I guess would be their advisor or committee if there was a need to potentially work perhaps like 10 hours a week or something. Would you say, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, again, all that would be ultimately negotiated with your committee chair. And there is no, I mean, an important component of that $40,000 to emphasize that there's no work requirement for the university for that, right? And so what we're really hoping is that you take the time that creates for you to engage with the program. But as Dr. Lancey said, again, I think that we have the opportunity to look at each case individually and try to make determinations. Again, it would be very, very difficult to have a full-time teaching position. Again, one of the things that I think, just as I try to imagine what it would take to accommodate such a thing, it would be finding the course availability during the daytime or, in an evening session. And that would be, potentially possible with some seminars or something, but the vast majority of our doctoral program requirements are satisfied during sort of those daytime hours. So really quickly, just an overview of the admissions requirements for the University of Utah. Again, $55 application fee. The graduate school at the University of Utah requires a 3.0 grade point average from undergraduate or master's. We do have some capacity to support students to interpret that. So sometimes we're allowed to look at your content area grade point average. So let's say you started as a biology major and didn't do well in chemistry or something like that. We have some capacity to look at GPAs and make arguments that, again, focus on things like content area, et cetera. 3 years of experience as a special education teacher with students with complex support needs, or again, some sort of related experience that is sort of similar to that teaching experience. The application itself involves a cover letter of intent, a professional position statement that just sort of begins to lay out sort of your objectives and what you want to obtain from the program, as well as your own interest in sort of emerging research agendas. A professional writing sample, 3 professional letters of recommendation, And then again, we request that ideally we can get at least 2 of those from folks who can address your academic and scholarly abilities. Our university graduate school still does require the GRE, the 3 sections being verbal, quantitative, and writing. We really look at that holistically, though, probably the greatest emphasis being focused on the writing component of that GRE. And then the final component for submission would just be a CV or resume.
All right, so for the University of Arizona, there is a $90 application fee for the grad college. And there is also a 3.0 GPA requirement, but only for master's degree. So you do not need to include your undergraduate degree information there. There's also similarly a 3-year minimum or preferred professional experience in special education or a related field. You must also submit your CV or resume, a technical or professional writing sample. So this could be something like your master's thesis, a research paper, a policy brief. It could be anything that you would consider professional or technical writing. You can also, of course, update it. So if you wrote something a long time ago and edited it, you could submit that. It doesn't need to be when it was written. So there's flexibility here based on what you want to submit. And then a statement of purpose. And finally, 3 professional letters of recommendation. And for us, it's at least 1 from a faculty member who can speak to your scholarly activities. We also look at this admissions, the requirements very holistically. And so, weighing more on, for example, the statement of purpose and an interview, which is what we're going to talk about, versus on your GPA, for example. So it's very holistic in the way that we approach this application process as well. And then moving forward, so where to go from here? So first off, we suggest that you start exploring faculty profiles of faculty members at the institution you would like to attend, or even at multiple institutions if you're interested in both. We highly suggest that you email 1 or more faculty members whose research aligns with your interest to schedule one-on-one discussions before you apply. And this is actually required for the University of Utah, that you have this sort of one-on-one discussion with at least 2 faculty members, one of which being Dr. Jameson, before applying to the program, so that there's understanding that there is a faculty member with related expertise who can advise you if you were to attend the institution. And then also, these discussions will also help you to think through your research interests in preparation for your application as well. At the University of Arizona, we highly suggest that you reach out to 1 or multiple people for these discussions. However, you can apply without doing that, but we highly suggest that you have these discussions in advance to make sure that we can ultimately be able to support you. So number 3, apply to your desired doctoral program, ideally by January 15th if you want to be considered for funding. However, we will accept applications after this due date. And then you may be invited for a Zoom interview, which will be approximately 30 minutes with faculty to discuss your interests in the special education doctoral program, your research interests, how those align with the funding, so with SCIENCE-ESN and with program faculty members. So is there a faculty member who aligns with what you want to do, who would be able to be your advisor? And then how your background has contributed to your preparation for a doctoral program in special education. Okay, so now we're going to open it up for Q&A. However, if you think of things that maybe we don't talk about here tonight, but you have questions later, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Jameson if you're interested in Utah-specific information, or myself if you're interested in U of A-specific information. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share.